In 1879, Leo Tolstoy stood in his study holding a rope. He was 50 years old. He had written War and Peace, Anna Karenina. He was celebrated across Europe as the greatest novelist alive. He had a loving wife, 13 children, and a vast estate. And yet, he wanted to die. He had everything the world told him to want, and none of it meant anything. He hid ropes from himself. He stopped carrying his hunting rifle, afraid of what he might do. The man who understood the human soul better than anyone alive could not understand why he wanted to stop living. Fame, wealth, family, empty. What saved him? What did he discover in his darkest hour that the rest of us spend our entire lives searching for? Today, we uncover the crisis that broke Tolstoy and the answer that rebuilt him into something entirely new. The Golden Cage. Leo Tolstoy was born in 1828 into Russian aristocracy at Yasnaya Polyana, an estate larger than some European countries. He inherited it at 19, along with 300 serfs who worked the land. He was rich before he understood what money meant, but wealth came with expectations. He was supposed to be educated, refined, a gentleman of leisure. Instead, Tolstoy gambled away fortunes. He drank heavily. He visited brothels and wrote about it in diaries he would later force his wife to read. I have lived through much, and now I think I have found what is needed for happiness. But that revelation would come decades later. In his youth, Tolstoy was running from something he couldn't name. He joined the army and fought in the Crimean War, witnessing slaughter that would haunt his writing forever. He traveled Europe, met famous writers, and felt superior to them all, yet nothing filled the void. Gold and crowns brought only emptiness. He returned to Russia more lost than before, and that restlessness would drive him to pick up a pen and change literature forever. Literary Titan. Between 1865 and 1869, Tolstoy wrote War and Peace, 1,200 pages, over 500 characters, a sweeping portrait of Russia during the Napoleonic invasion that scholars would later call the greatest novel ever written. He followed it with Anna Karenina, a devastating exploration of love, betrayal, and the prison of social expectations. Critics across Europe hailed him as a genius. His books sold in the hundreds of thousands. Master of prose. Dostoevsky himself acknowledged Tolstoy's brilliance, though the two never met and privately envied each other. But here is what no one understood. With every page Tolstoy wrote, with every character he created, he was searching. Not for fame, not for artistic perfection. He was searching for meaning, and he was failing. If the greatest novelist alive can write the greatest books and still feel nothing, then what hope do the rest of us have? Hit like and subscribe to explore the darkness that awaits, because what comes next nearly destroyed him completely. The Crisis. It began in 1879. Tolstoy was at the height of his powers, 50 years old, wealthy beyond measure, famous across continents, and he could not get out of bed. The question consumed him like a disease. What is the point of any of this? He wrote later about this period in a confession, one of the most honest documents about existential despair ever put to paper. He described feeling like a man who has climbed a tower only to realize there is no floor beneath him. He had built his life on accomplishments that suddenly seemed meaningless. My question, the one that brought me to the verge of suicide at 50 years old, was the simplest of questions. What will come of what I am doing today or tomorrow? He could not answer. Science offered facts but no meaning. Philosophy offered systems but no comfort. He looked at the peasants working his fields and noticed they did not ask these questions. They simply lived. Revelation. What did they know that he had forgotten? But before he could find out, he had to survive the darkness that was swallowing him whole. 4 escapes. Tolstoy identified 4 ways people deal with the meaninglessness of existence. The first is ignorance. Some people never ask the question. They live, they work, they die, never wondering why. Tolstoy envied them but could not become them. The second is pleasure. Drown the question in wine, women, entertainment. He had tried this. It failed. Wine, women, emptiness. The third is the escape he almost took. Suicide. If life has no meaning, end it. He admitted this seemed the most logically consistent response. He came terrifyingly close. The fourth was what he called weakness, knowing life is meaningless but continuing anyway out of habit or cowardice. He realized he had been living this fourth way for years, pretending meaning existed. But none of these satisfied him. There had to be a fifth option, something beyond logic, something that could hold the weight of existence without breaking. And he found it in the last place his intellectual pride would have looked: peasant wisdom. The answer came from the people Tolstoy had overlooked his entire life. The peasants, the serfs, the uneducated laborers who worked his fields and asked for nothing but bread. They faced the same suffering he did: disease, death, loss. Yet they did not despair. I began to draw near to the believers among the poor, simple, unlettered folk, pilgrims, monks, sectarians, and peasants. What did they have that he lacked? Faith. Not the hollow rituals of the Orthodox Church with its gold and incense and power politics. Something simpler, a direct connection to God through love, service, and surrender. The intellect alone could not find meaning. Only the heart could. Tolstoy began to study the Gospels with fresh eyes, stripping away centuries of institutional interpretation to find the original message. What he discovered would transform him completely and set him on a collision course with every power structure in Russia. But first, he had to answer a question that had tortured him for decades: the teaching. Tolstoy found his answer in 5 words from the Sermon on the Mount. Do not resist evil with evil. This was not passive acceptance. It was radical transformation. The entire foundation of civilization, Tolstoy realized, was built on violence. Governments maintained order through force. Churches blessed armies. Courts punished criminals with cages and death. Even families used coercion and manipulation. Every institution he had trusted was infected with the disease it claimed to cure. What if there was another way? Tolstoy developed what he called Christian anarchism: reject all violence, refuse to participate in systems that harm others, live simply, give away your possessions, love your enemies, love, resist nothing. This was not philosophy for books. This was a program for living, and Tolstoy began to live it, starting with his own estate. The transformation would cost him nearly everything he held dear. Radical change. Tolstoy renounced his wealth, or tried to. He transferred ownership of his estate and copyrights to his wife Sophia. He began dressing like a peasant, wearing simple tunics and sandals. He learned to make shoes. He plowed his own fields. The greatest novelist in Europe was making boots and growing vegetables. His family thought he had lost his mind. His wife, who had copied out War and Peace 7 times by hand, watched in horror as her husband gave away the fortune she had helped build. The tension in their marriage became unbearable, but Tolstoy was not performing. He was trying to solve the equation of his life. Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. He wrote new books now, not novels, treatises on nonviolence, on the corruption of the church, on the evil of private property. The government began watching him. The church prepared to act. And across the world, a young lawyer in South Africa read Tolstoy's words and felt his life change forever. Global impact. In 1894, a 24-year-old Mohandas Gandhi read Tolstoy's The Kingdom of God is Within You. It struck him like lightning. Awakening. Gandhi wrote to Tolstoy. They exchanged letters. The old Russian count and the young Indian lawyer connected across continents by a shared vision of nonviolent resistance. Gandhi would take Tolstoy's philosophy and forge it into a weapon against the British Empire. One book became a movement that changed the world. Martin Luther King Jr. would later cite both men as his primary influences. The Civil Rights Movement, Indian independence, the collapse of apartheid, all trace their philosophical lineage back to a suicidal Russian aristocrat who found meaning in the words of peasants and the teachings of Christ. One man changed history, but Tolstoy paid a price for his vision. The authorities were about to make their move. Excommunication. In 1901, The Russian Orthodox Church excommunicated Leo Tolstoy. The most famous writer in the world was officially declared a heretic. The church that claimed to follow Christ cast out the man who tried to live like Christ. The announcement was read in churches across Russia. Tolstoy was banned from receiving sacraments. He could not be buried in holy ground. For Tolstoy, it was a badge of honor. He had exposed the church as a political institution that blessed wars, supported serfdom, and served the state rather than God. The church is a lie, possibly the most terrible lie ever told. The government wanted to arrest him, but he was too famous. Imprisoning Tolstoy would cause international outrage, so they watched. They censored his religious writings. They harassed his followers, but they could not silence a man who had already decided that death meant nothing. Tolstoy continued writing, teaching, living according to his principles, until the end came in the most unexpected way. The final escape. In November 1910, at 82 years old, Tolstoy fled his home in the middle of the night. His marriage had become unbearable. Sophia was controlling, jealous, hysterical. She had threatened suicide multiple times. Tolstoy could no longer live with the contradiction between his philosophy and his life of comfort. Escape, freedom, peace. He took a train with no destination. He wanted to become a wandering pilgrim, to die as he had tried to live. 10 days later, he developed pneumonia at a small railway station called Estepovo. The world gathered outside. Journalists, photographers, his family. The man who had searched his entire life for meaning was dying in a station master's house. He refused to see the Orthodox priests, who came to reclaim his soul. His last coherent words reportedly were about the peasants and their simple faith. On November 20, 1910, Leo Tolstoy died. He had found what he was looking for, not in fame, not in wealth, not even in answers, but in the question itself honestly asked. The sole meaning of life is to serve humanity. This was what saved him, not answers, not certainty, service, love, the decision to live for others instead of for himself. Tolstoy's crisis was not unique. Every thinking person eventually asks his question. What is the point? The difference is whether you have the courage to sit with the question until it transforms you. Most of us hide from it. We distract ourselves with work, entertainment, achievement. We build towers like Tolstoy did, then wonder why they feel empty. Fame, wealth meaning nothing. The answer he found was simple, so simple that his intellectual pride almost missed it. Love others. Serve others. Stop resisting life with violence and ego. Let go of what you think you need and discover what remains. If you made it this far, comment Fifth Escape to prove you understood what Tolstoy discovered. The truth is never comfortable, but it is always worth knowing. History has more to teach us. Subscribe if you want to learn.